Hello, this is Little Green Ghouls, and welcome to Fear Street Explored, where your worst nightmares live. This week, I'm excited to visit the Fire Game. This was another fun entry into the Fear Street series, with a story about a group of teen pyromaniacs who spiral out of control. This one falls more into the mystery category of Fear Street books, rather than full-on horror, and its big plot twist is pretty predictable. It still manages to be a good time though, and is worth checking out if you haven't yet. This 1991 cover gives us a nice look at the climax of this story, with a cabin burning in the Fear Street woods. Also, I definitely thought our main character was going to be a guy for a change, based off how this cover was set up, but it's not. So, let's check out the full blurb on the back. It was just a game. The first fire started almost by accident. A wastebasket fire in the school library. Jill Franks and her friends found it exciting, and it got them out of school for a few hours. Who could have guessed that the fire game would quickly spread, that one fire would lead to another, that Jill and Andrea and Diane and the three boys they hung out with would find themselves caught in the most dangerous and deadly game of all. When one of their fires ends in murder, the game ends, and the real terror begins. All of them realize that someone is playing the game for keeps. Now Jill has no choice. She knows she must find the murderer before her life goes up in flames. Okay, let's start this summary. The book opens with an introduction to Jill Franks, who is busy being loud in the school library with her friend Andrea, while their other friend Diane does not find this behavior amusing. The three girls are all friends from gymnastics, with Diane still being somewhat new to Shadyside. They end up talking about an upcoming competition, and decide that maybe Andrea could do her floor routine to some original music to help her stand out against the other girls. Diane has a musician friend moving to Shadyside named Gabe, who she thinks will be willing to help put something together. Jill is excited at the idea of a new boy being around because her current pursuers, Nick and Max, just aren't doing it for her. Right on cue, the two boys appear and start discussing horror movies with the girls, who are completely uninterested. They make reference to a movie called The Torch, where a man can shoot fire out of his fingertips. This seems to be on theme, considering the title and cover of this book. The boys then pull out butane lighters in the middle of the library and pretend to duel with them like lightsabers. This freaks Diane the fuck out, and she begs Jill to get them to stop. I think we're supposed to suspect some sort of past trauma with fire going on here, but I'd be pissed at these boys too, considering they actually set a folder on fire briefly. Andrea shakes the folder out and tosses it into the trash. Then everybody heads to their next class. Jill is busy daydreaming about who Gabe could be when she's interrupted by the fire alarm. Everybody heads outside and learns that the trash can in the library caught fire, and the fire department had to come put it out. This is the second book to feature Shadyside High School catching fire, because the bathroom was just on fire in The Stepsister a couple weeks ago. Jill knows this was their fault. When all the kids meet at the pizza shop later, they agree to keep their mouths shut. Diane is still traumatized from this, but quickly cheers up when Gabe walks into the shop. Jill is pleased to see that he's just as handsome as Diane said he would be, and is instantly interested in him. She even shivers when they make eye contact for the first time. Gabe is from the city, so he's not thrilled to now be in small town Shadyside. The kids inevitably start bragging to Gabe about how the fire they set on accident, and this seems to intrigue him because throughout this conversation, he's been really aloof and a little rude. He then says how it takes real guts to set a fire deliberately, and hints that maybe he's done that before. Diane is not pleased where this conversation has gone, and seems to be worried about what Gabe's capable of. We jump to a week later, and the kids are in the cafeteria eating lunch. Max is now on a diet because he wants to look as good as Gabe does, since he's quickly snatched up all the girls' attention, even though he's Mr. Negative, and always complaining about how crappy Shadyside is. They bring up Fear Street to impress Gabe, which kinda works because he likes the idea of a haunted street. And we learn Fear Street was named after one of the founding settlers, Simon Fear, whose old dilapidated mansion is now a Shadyside landmark. Diane says her parents just bought a cabin on the lake next to the Fear Street woods, and thinks they should all head out there for a picnic soon. Gabe is like, let's go right now. Let's set fire to the school and go. They all think he's joking at first, but nope, he wants to set a fire so they all can get out of school early again. Gabe ends up pressuring Max into setting a fire in the boys' room, and within half a page, the boys' restroom explodes, knocking the door off the hinges. This is clearly a much bigger fire than just a simple wastebasket fire, so everybody is wondering what the fuck Max just did in there. The next chapter then opens with the kids all sitting outside Diane's cabin, having a picnic, so their little plan worked. Everyone is in skimpy summer clothes and swimsuits, except Diane, who's in jeans and a long sleeve shirt, claiming she's allergic to the sun. Given this story's theme, I'm calling it now, this girl must be covered in burns. We learn when Max set the fire, he just threw a couple of lit paper towels into a wastebasket, but it must have caught a nearby cart full of cleaning supplies on fire, which led to the explosion. The kids then have a picnic and explore Diane's new cabin, which looks old and rustic on the outside, but is very 90s modern on the inside, where her artist father does metal sculpting. They end up playing around the lake for a while before the boys decide to have a race. There is a lot of competing for girls' attention going on here, and Andrea eventually asks Diane if it would be okay if she pursues Gabe. Diane says it's fine because they're just old friends, but Jill gets the sense that something more is going on here. After the race, the kids are eating some hot dogs, and Diane pulls out Gabe's old guitar, which of course leads to him serenading everyone before it turns into a full-on sing-along. Eventually, they pack up for the night, but when Gabe goes to put out a candle, he first holds his hand directly over the flame for a bit without flinching, because the boy is fire-obsessed. We hop to next Tuesday, and the girls are shopping at the mall, which is apparently the place to be because it's so crowded they can barely get through it. Andrea is full-on obsessed with Gabe now, and spends pages interrogating Diane about him. Jill is still interested too, but the whole hand over the fire stunt put her off a bit. They do some clothes shopping for a while, when Jill suddenly hears Diane freaking out in the dressing rooms. Jill thought she was being attacked based off her reaction, but it turns out Andrea just accidentally walked in on Diane getting ready to try on clothes. So, yep, this girl is covered in burn scars for sure. Jill and Andrea just dismiss this as her being modest and move on. When Diane comes out, she tries to explain that she thought Andrea was a stranger at first, that's why she freaked out. To which Andrea responds, "Who did you think I was, Freddy Krueger?" Which I'm taking as another clue towards burn scars, because we all know Freddy is all burnt up too. At home that night, Jill cuddles her cat Mitzi on the couch for a bit, and I'm instantly filled with dread for this poor cat. Around 11, she gets a phone call from Gabe where he basically asks her out on a date. Jill says yes, but she's also nervous because she finds Gabe to be a little too unpredictable for her taste. She's also worried about Diane and Andrea getting jealous. We jump to a couple days later, and all the kids are driving around town at night, showing Gabe the major spots, before he requests a tour of Fear Street. Max points out a house where they recently found 6 skeletons in the backyard, and soon the kids are all listing off plot lines of various books, like Missing, Halloween Party, and The Surprise Party. They tell Gabe about how the undead supposedly roam the Fear Street Cemetery at night, which of course results in all of them piling out of the car at the cemetery to take a look around. They admire some old headstones, and for once, Gabe actually seems to be having a good time. They notice an old shack, and suddenly Gabe thinks they need to light another fire. He tries to pressure Nick into it, but he has a brain and is like, no way. So Gabe ends up setting a random graveyard shack on fire, much to the delight of Andrea. They race back to the car and watch the fire from a distance like a bunch of psychopaths, and Gabe gleefully informs Nick that now it's his turn, he really has to set the next fire. They leave as the fire trucks approach, and this fire has gotten Andrea so worked up that she starts making out with Gabe in the back seat. This is awkward for Jill, considering she has a date with Gabe in a few days. On Friday night, the girls are having a sleepover at Andrea's house, and are all amazed at her 90s entertainment setup. They also stop to admire her new laptop, complete with a CD drive and personal printer. This inspires Andrea to type a brief poem in blue ink that reads, "I hope you won't think I'm a liar, but I love it when Gabe plays with fire." Diane does not find this poem amusing and chastises Andrea, demanding to know if she's read the paper lately, because there was just an article on the increase in arson incidents at Shadyside, and it specifically referenced the fires at the school and cemetery. Andrea finds this even more exciting and gets mad at Diane for wanting them to stop their little fire game. Then, right on cue, Jill answers Andrea's phone, and it's the fire department wanting to talk to Andrea's mom about the recent fires. This is just Max though, playing a prank and trying to scare the girls a bit. They all agree to cool it on the fire setting, and Diane is thrilled to hear this. The other kids are still acting like Diane is the weird one for not wanting to burn things down for fun. Jill ends up telling Diane and Andrea about her upcoming date with Gabe, and Andrea is just like, best of luck, may the best woman win, because she plans on still pursuing Gabe herself. On Saturday night, Jill is happily having the most romantic evening of her life as Gabe plays guitar for her in the park under the moonlight. I couldn't handle this. I would spontaneously combust from awkwardness if somebody sang a song to me like this. They end up making out for a bit before walking back towards his car. Jill brings up the fire game and asks him to get the other guys to stop, but he's very against this idea since he's having too much fun with it. Their conversation gets interrupted though when they spot a crowd around his car because it's engulfed in flames. Jill tries to stop him, but Gabe races for it just as the gas tank explodes, knocking him back towards the sidewalk. They speak to the fire chief eventually, who thinks it was another case of arson, so both Gabe and Jill are instantly suspicious of Nick, since it was his turn to do the next fire, and he's been jealous of Gabe. To me, it's probably Diane, since Stine has put so much effort into convincing us that it couldn't be her, but we'll see. At home, Jill calls Nick, and he's confused because he's been at home all night watching both versions of The Fly, and knows nothing about a fire. Jill doesn't believe him and moves on to updating Andrea about the fire situation, who reacts predictably at this point, because there's no getting around it. Fire gets her libido going. Andrea doesn't think it's a big deal, and hopes that now that all the boys have set fires, it will stop. Jill falls asleep, only to wake up a couple hours later to the smell of smoke. She races downstairs and finds smoke billowing out of the oven. She ends up dumping a bucket of water on it, revealing the charred dead body of Mitzi the cat. Thankfully, this just ends up being a nightmare, but I was fully prepared for Stine to go there. Later in the week, Jill's supposed to study at Nick's house, but when she arrives, she spots Max and Nick driving away. She's confused and thinks maybe he forgot about their study session, and decides to see where the boys are going. She follows them and is unnerved when they turn down Fear Street. She almost turns back, but decides to follow anyway. However, she manages to lose them, even though Fear Street is a dead end. When she goes to turn back, her car suddenly dies, and she starts to freak out as a dark figure approaches her. Luckily, this just ends up being a police officer, checking to see if she's okay. He helps her get her car started back up, and she resumes her search. She eventually spots Nick's car parked by a deserted old house at the edge of the woods. She gets out and looks through the windows, just in time to spot flames. She then turns around and sees Nick and Max gleefully running away together. They don't notice Jill, and she thinks how this fire game has really gotten out of control now that they've set a whole house on fire. Jill returns home in disbelief at her friend's actions. When she turns on the news, she's horrified to hear that a homeless man had been living inside that house and was found dead outside of it of a heart attack. She decides to confront Nick directly and calls him. He denies everything at first until Jill informs him that a homeless man had been in that house and is now dead. This causes him to admit that he was there with Max, but claims they didn't start the fire. Instead, he says Max and him both got notes on their doors to head to the house on Fear Street if they wanted to see some real action. Then, when they got there, the fire started. This information causes Jill to think that maybe Gabe set the fire out of revenge for his car. She calls up Diane, who immediately wants everybody to meet in person, even though it's like 11 o'clock at night. Soon, Jill, Diane, and Max and Nick are all together looking at the mystery notes, and right away, Diane and Jill notice that it's been printed with blue ink, just like Andrea's new printer. Jill and Diane leave the boys and head to Andrea's house to confront her. This goes horribly, and Andrea becomes enraged when she finds out what they're accusing her of. She throws the two girls out, and they walk away, believing that Andrea had nothing to do with the mystery notes. Once back at home, Andrea's cooled down a bit and calls Jill, asking to meet her the next morning at school early to discuss some theories involving Gabe. The next morning, Jill arrives at school early and can't find Andrea in the locker room or gym. She does run into Diane though, who says Andrea also invited her last night. It should be noted, Diane is wearing a long-sleeved gym leotard because, like I've said before, burn victim. They decide to wait in the gymnastics area for Andrea when they find her unconscious behind a pile of mats. They think she's dead at first, but it becomes clear she was knocked out as she has a giant blue bruise forming on her forehead. An ambulance hauls Andrea away, and the general consensus is that she must have fallen off a balance beam and hit her head, but Jill and Diane don't fully buy that. That evening, the kids all meet to figure out who started the fire. This goes nowhere, and all they do is accuse each other for like an entire chapter with no general consensus. Other than Diane never gets accused, which I think is suspicious in and of itself. I'm on to you, Stine. Jill ends up getting a ride home from Gabe. He basically tells her that she should just stop worrying about the fires because he thinks they're probably over now, and they should just go on a date tomorrow instead. Jill is still digmatized, so she agrees to take a break from all this fire talk and go on a date with him. At home, Jill is cheerfully watching TV and petting Mitzi when she gets a visit from two detectives who want to ask her about the Fear Street fires. Detective Fraser wants to know what she was doing on Fear Street the night of the fire, and Jill quickly lies that she had a fight with her boyfriend and was just driving around to clear her head when her car broke down. She gives the detectives no further information and they leave. Jill feels bad about lying to the cops, so she calls the hospital to check on Andrea, but she's still unconscious. This causes Jill to have a change of heart, and now she wants to tell the police everything and let them sort it out. She calls Diane because she wants help convincing the boys to confess too, but instead, Diane suggests they spend a weekend at her cabin and just chill for a bit. That way they can get their story straight. Diane is clearly going to go into full villain mode at this cabin, but Jill doesn't suspect that and is excited for a weekend with just the two of them. At the cabin, they spend a few pages eating frozen pizzas and relaxing before Diane heads upstairs to take a shower. The phone rings and it's Andrea, who is now awake and angry. There's some brief confusion where Andrea thinks she's talking to Diane instead of Jill, but we learn that Diane was the one who knocked Andrea unconscious. She says Diane must have printed the notes at her house and has been setting fires because she's in love with Gabe and is trying to take out the competition. This means Jill's in extra danger now that Diane knows that her and Gabe have been going out, so she needs to get out of this cabin. Jill sneaks out to the car, but realizes Diane must have taken her car keys. She panics and decides just to book it into the Fear Street woods. It's a moonless night, so she's just stumbling around in the dark. She scares herself so intensely in these woods that when she spots a flashlight in the distance, she doesn't even hesitate and just races towards it, which of course results in her running into Diane. We learn that Jill has basically just been wandering around in a circle and that the cabin is close by. Diane is acting normal, so Jill pretends she just got lost while getting some fresh air. They sit next to the fire, and when Diane asks who called earlier, rather than just saying wrong number, Jill tells Diane everything Andrea told her. This causes Diane to put on an evil smile because everything Andrea said was true. She set the house on fire, Gabe's car on fire, and knocked Andrea out in an attempt to kill her, all because she's been in love with Gabe since she was a little girl. Jill tells herself that she's bigger than Diane, so she can take her if she has to. Diane chucks Jill's car keys into the fire, so Jill gets up to walk away, but Diane suddenly tackles her to the ground, starts scratching her, pulling her hair, and punching her in the face. Diane's robe falls off her shoulders and reveals that her body is covered in long, red, ropey scars. We learn that nearly Diane's entire body was burned when a kerosene heater exploded at her grandma's house 4 years ago. Gabe visited her every day in the hospital, but she says he will never love her, so if she can't have him, no one will. Diane then grabs an industrial blowtorch, flicks it on, and heads towards Jill, ready to burn her. Jill is able to roll away, but Diane sets the couch on fire in her attack. Jill stumbles through the house, with Diane setting everything in fire that they pass, all while chanting, "Feel the pain." Jill ends up tripping over an ottoman, and just as Diane's getting ready to start roasting her, Gabe kicks in the cabin door and tells her to stop. He wrestles Diane for the torch and burns his hand in the process, but he gets it away from her. Gabe then chucks Diane out of the burning cabin and returns to pull Jill out too. Her clothes have started to burn, so he spends a bit just rolling her on the ground to extinguish the flames. Given how passive Jill is suddenly acting, you'd think she's unconscious, but no, she's just very helpless now, I guess. Gabe then cradles Diane, apologizing for what his fire game has caused, and that's how this one ends. Gabe just holds on to Diane and promises that the fire game is over for good. I wanted Jill to drag Diane back into the burning cabin by her hair. Overall, I thought the fire game was another solid read. I liked the idea of these kids getting so addicted to setting fires that it spirals out of control on them. I also enjoyed the climax taking us back to the Fear Street woods, and how the characters spend some time reviewing the Fear Street lore. This one did spin its wheels for a bit, with many sections containing characters just sitting around accusing each other, while avoiding the obvious suspect. I'm going to give this one 4 out of 5 blowtorches. I think this could have been a 5-star book if Stine wasn't so heavy-handed with the clues in this one. Okay, for Fear Street deaths in the fire game, we had just one. This was the poor homeless guy who just so happened to be in the abandoned house before it was set on fire, causing him to have a heart attack and die. This brings our Fear Street series total to 10 deaths. In Fat 90s Moments, we had just 5 this week. These included crowded malls, Freddy Krueger, VCRs, chunky laptops, and Jeff Goldblum's The Fly. This brings our Fear Street series total to 63. Tainted Love is back again, this time featuring some unrequited love turned toxic, as Diane's love for Gabe turns into a psycho pyromaniac out to kill the competition. This gives us a Fear Street series total of 11. Cheesy Ending does not make an appearance this week, since the story just kinda ends rather abruptly, with Gabe being traumatized by his old friend's actions. This leaves our Fear Street series total at 7. Well, that's it for the fire game. I'm surprised this one didn't find itself on a book ban list, considering it features kids setting their school on fire to get out of class. Next week, we're looking at another Give Yourself Goosebumps adventure with Trapped in Batwing Hall, which has us going on a scavenger hunt in an old haunted mansion, so that should be fun. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the fire game. Do you enjoy setting things on fire? How about giving in to peer pressure? Do you think the sweet, innocent girl actually being the villain is going to become a running theme? Also, what did you think of my fiery horror clips this week? I feel like this is kind of a new theme we haven't got to explore before. Anyways, as always, thanks again for watching, and make sure you subscribe for
the pride, the love.